Okay, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today for the fourth um, Fiberside Chats. And today my special guest is going to be Robin of Nistock Farms. And so I'm so excited to have her here today. And the reason for that is because while I love all fiber vendors and yarn people and dyers and shepherds, equally, of course, Robin is actually someone that I met early on in my spinning career. She was a member of my spinning guild that I belonged to like way back when. So it's like over 15 years now. So I actually like know Robin in person. And I'm just so happy that she's able to join me today for this Fiberside chat. And so for those of you that have not, excuse me, been to a Fiberside chat before, basically, we're just going to do a quick little conversation. I have some questions that I want to ask Robin, but if there's any questions after we have our conversation and I interview her, feel free to go ahead and put any of your questions in the comment area. And then once the interview concludes, I'll go and I'll read any of the questions and comments to her. Okay, so without further ado, I will present my guest. So Robin, hello, and thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Hi, Alanna. Thanks so much for inviting me, and it's going to be a real pleasure to have a conversation with you. And I'm glad to have known you for so long because I've seen your progression of teacher and learner, and you're just awesome.
well, sending love back to you as well. Yeah, and I think that's something that is so nice about being part of a guild. Is that not only do you feel like you're a community member, but whenever you have that newbie that walks in the door and they're kind of, unsure of themselves, they're not sure if they need a spinning wheel or a drop spindle or what the best fiber to use is and all of that, but they kind of come in with this enchanted excitement about the process, that there's this magical act of turning fiber into yarn. And so I was really fortunate when I joined the guild, or when I first came to the guild, because it seemed like there was such a family community feeling and vibe of it. And, we would have vendors like yourself that would come and share their wares, every month. But there was just something about it that felt like when you're amongst people that get you and they share the same passion and love as you for the fiber arts, that it just feels like a second home. And so I thank you for being one of the people that have made me feel at home in that group. But since you were there when I first joined, I'm kind of curious, where were you in your life when you first found out or heard about the fiber arts as a thing, or got excited about it and interested in it?
Well, I guess I could say I've always been a sheep person. My parents had a flock of sheep when I was a child. And so although we did not show or do much formal stuff with them, they were always there. There's dog people, there's cat people, and we were sheep people. So I was in college when my dad passed away and the flock had to be dispersed, but one of our neighbors who also kept a small flock kept back some of the animals from my dad's flock. And when I got out of college, I took them back. So the foundation for the animals that I have now literally came from my parents' flock. And I've added others, of course, but it's that nice little connection that kind of spans the generations, and it's a link. So I've always had sheep and always been excited at shearing time to see the pretty wool peel off the sheep. And in the 1980s, when I was at Cornell, there was the Black Sheep Hand Spinners Guild over there in Ithaca, and they had a learn how to spin workshop or day or something like that. And so I went with a friend and I was smitten. And I thought, well, shoot, here I've had, all this wool and stuff in my life. I should learn how to spin. And so I went to a class at the Rochester Museum and Science Center. Mm-hmm. I think it was Ann Krekel taught a class in how to spin. And so I got hooked there. I got a Louette wheel. And then once I got married and I brought some sheep with me, and we always joke that was my dowry. I brought 11 sheep with me. And I told Andy, oh, it's just going to be, a little flock just for my own self, just because I want to be able to spin. And of course, then that evolved over time. But that's when I learned how to spin back in the 1980s.
So you and your family had sheep, but no one in your family was actually using them for their fiber. Was it just like meat, or were they just pets, or like?
It was for the wool. It was for the wool. That's back
Okay.
when if you sold your clip every year to the wool pool,
Okay.
chances are it would make a good dent in your farm's taxes.
Oh, okay.
So, and you know, every year we did breed, and lambs went to auction, and I'm sure they ended up in someone's meat market channel, but we didn't do that ourselves. We just raised the lambs, sent them off, and did the wool for the wool pool clip.
Okay, but so no one in your family was really ever interested in spinning or knitting or crocheting or any of the fiber arts that was like a passed down thing. It was more like going to the Rochester Museum class that really got you into it.
Yeah. There were no spinners in my family, at least in my generation. Now, when
Mm-hmm.
my grandmother passed away in 1976 and we were dispersing her estate, my
Mm-hmm.
father's mother, there was a grate wheel and a flax wheel stuck away in the attic. And of course, they had been used out of necessity
Mm-hmm.
rather than just love of the hobby. And I have both of those wheels, and I had them refurbished by Mr. Bill Ralph down in Pennsylvania, who has since passed away. But he had a spinning museum down in, I think it was Orwell, Pennsylvania. And both of them are working antique wheels.
Wow.
I have to admit, I don't use them very often. They are quirky. And if I'm going to sit and spin, it's because I either need to or I want to enjoy the process and not have to argue with my wheel. But it's also another nice connection to what was and what is now.
Yeah, I mean that's so fascinating too, that it's not just like the lineage of your sheep has been passed down, but then also the tools, you know, as
Yeah.
well. So that's like a fascinating thing, how that can stay in the family and, you know, just be something that isn't just like a one-time purchase, like maybe like a car, you know, where you get the use out of it and then it dies and you have to get something else, but that you can keep using it. So that's pretty cool. So as far as your spinning then, right, like you have these sheep, so how do you like to go about preparing their fleece when you spin it?
Um, when I was smaller scale and I was just spinning for myself,
Mm-hmm.
I would quite often wash and card. And then it dawned on me that I could do a lot more spinning if someone else was doing the washing and carding. So I had roving made quite often, both at Zeilinger and Frankenmuth Wool and Mill. And I enjoy spinning mostly just from roving. And then I kind of segued as my business expanded and grew, and I realized I could have an actual business. I did less and less of my own prep and spinning for my own pleasure, which seems kind of weird in a way, but I also get a lot of pleasure just from handling the wool that my sheep produce, getting them prepared and skirted for other hand spinners, sending them off. I make bats on my drum carder, so I'm always handling fiber. And in fact, I'm kind of an indifferent knitter. I can do it, but I don't get the joy out of it, and it doesn't come easily to me the way it does to many people. So I'm satisfied if I just handle my product and then hand it to somebody else and say, here, make something beautiful with this. That's satisfying enough for me.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting to me how different people gravitate towards different I would refer to it as like the beginning of the process, you know. So some
Mm-hmm.
people just want to go to the store and buy the sweater, right? And then some
Mm-hmm.
people want to just start with the yarn. They don't want to deal with dyeing it or spinning it, you know. But it's interesting to know that you enjoy the spinning part, but then does that sort of like end for you there? Like, so if you don't like knitting as much, do you weave or do you do anything else with your yarn, or is it just spinning and then you just get rid of the hand spun, or how does that work for you?
I spin and I have a very large stash. I do have a loom and I have woven some things and I enjoyed it. I like doing kind of big things like blankets because it eats up so much material. But there again, I haven't had a whole lot of time to sit and do that either. I tend to skim over the top of things. Right now, I'm into rug punching.
Okay.
And I've used our own Cotswold wool. I've had it milled to the correct weights to do rug punching with. And I'm actually right now, before Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival, I'm in the process of putting together some rug punching kits for beginners using our Cotswold wool and the patterns that I've made. So that's a time, I mean, R&D of anything is kind of time consuming. You got to track down you know, all the different components and what's my packaging going to look like. And you have to sit down with a paper and pencil and do some math about price point. And, you know, so it's a slow process, but it's also interesting because I'm learning as I go. Now, how would this be done? How should that look? And So that's also a satisfying kind of creative thing. Even though I'm not creating, I'm creating a product for somebody else to do something with.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely is creating, and it's interesting too how you're saying that you don't really feel like you have enough time to actually do the fibery things, even though you have all of the fibery, supplies to do them with, right? And I guess it's almost like when you see someone that's working in an ice cream store and you think, wow, that would be like a dream job, like you could be around ice cream all day. But probably when you're there, not that you would be sick of your sheep, but that like you'd be so sick of eating ice cream, right, that that's the last thing you think you'd want to eat. But yeah, it is kind of interesting how people that do their passion for their career, they often don't have time to actually do it for themselves, that they're doing it so much for other people that they don't really have left at the end, of the day to do it for themselves, because they've been giving their energy towards, like you said, raising the sheep and taking care of them and all of that.
Right. And my husband and myself are just the only people here on the farm. Everything is just done by the two of us. So,
Wow.
when I'm in the barn feeding the sheep, that's good, and I need to do that, but I'm not skirting a fleece. And when I am skirting a fleece for a hand spinner, that's good, and I need to do that, but I'm not making bats to go on the shelf for the show that's coming up. So I always feel like I'm a little bit behind, and I'm not quite doing where I should be. I always need another day, another week, another month in the year, or something like that. But I get done as much as I can, and nobody ever knows what plan I had that I didn't get to.
There you go. Right. Yeah. And that's also nice too, as far as like what you're describing, like all of these jobs, so that you're not doing the same thing every day. It's not this like monotonous schedule, that there's all of these different components of being a shepherd that are involved. So it's not just the like actual feeding of the animals, but like you said, preparing the fleeces, preparing the fibers, and coming up with kits to showcase their fiber in the best light possible. So it's really fascinating to me what goes on in the behind the scenes, because especially as someone like myself that's just going to go to a place like you said, like Maryland, and walk around, you don't really know what goes into preparing everything to get that booth ready. You're so excited to just grab the things and run off and go make it. But like just the fact that you have to think about well, what is the best yarn for this process, and how can I get it milled that way. So that's really interesting. So of all of the uses of your flax fleece and the yarn that results from it, like what would you say it's like the best I don't know, either like the best type of like spinning for it, or like do you think it's like better for like weaving or knitting, or like for the people that buy from you, what do they really enjoy using the fleece that you produce for?
Well, that's part of the good part and the bad part of wool. Wool is so versatile, and we have so many different breeds of sheep all producing wool, that you can do everything from fine, soft baby clothes to coarse rug wool. You can felt with it. It just depends. The person buying the fiber is going to want to suit their project to the fiber, or the fiber to the project. So again, my flock is mostly medium wools and long wools, which are considered a coarse wool breed, the Cotswolds. But coarse wool doesn't have to be nasty or harsh. It just means that it's bigger in microns than some of the softer, finer wools. So you can still have good knitting yarn for outerwear garments. You can have heavier duty yarn for rugs. Cotswold does felt. It felts quite nicely. And in fact, I'm dying to take an online course from a lady in England who's doing these fantastic felted bags. And I think Cotswold would be fantastic for that. I just haven't quite got there yet. That's like a treat I'm saving for myself. When I get XYZ accomplished, then I'm going to give myself a splurge and let myself take that class.
Because then you'll know other ways that your fiber can be used, and then being able to share that information with other people.
Right. And that's another thing too. I mean, I never stop learning. I've been married for 31 years, and I've had sheep even before that. And I'm constantly learning new stuff. And like the punch needle kits that I'm making now, I have been dyeing wool for quite some time for roving and things like that, but I never really bothered to make reproducible recipes because, oh, you know, a one-off is pretty and I've got 10 pounds of this roving, and once it's sold, it's gone, and that's fine. I'll make another one. But now that I'm going to have kits and I want to have reproducible colors, I've gotten a lot more exacting with myself about writing down weights and measures, volumes, blah, blah. And then you got to do the math to scale up if you're going from 100-yard skein to 1,000-yard skein, you know. So I'm always learning some new aspect of whatever little rabbit hole I'm starting to go down. And I think that's why people new to the fiber arts world can simultaneously be overwhelmed with everything that there is to offer. But also, if you're a sponge, you can absorb, because those of us who have done it for some time and are doing it, we just want to hemorrhage information on you. You know, just whatever you want to know, we'll talk till your eyes glaze over. So it's nice to be able to share stuff that you've learned, and you know that it works for you, and you hope it'll work for the other person, because it's all fiber and it's all good.
Yeah, no, I like, well, definitely the whole rabbit hole of the specifics and precision of trying to match a color, you know, that's like right up my alley.
That's preaching to the choir. Yeah.
And so just another shout out to Robin. Okay, just to let you know like why she's like a very special person to me too. Even with like dyeing, right? You know, there's so many variables, and like with this book that I've been working on and trying to match colors, I was trying to test out different water samples. And so shout out to Robin for giving me some of her well water to test out, because, you know, like she's on a farm, right? And so the water that you use for your dyeing is well water, and I'm using municipal water, you know, in Rochester. And so to see like how do the colors change, because different dyers there's so many different variables. And I think like what you're saying too is that not only is it just like spinning, right? But that you can go down, like once you realize all of the different ways that you can use yarn, you know, like you said, it could be very overwhelming, but it's also interesting to me how people get into spinning. Do they get there first, like you started with spinning and then kind of branch out into all of the ways that yarn could be used? Or is it someone that's like a spinner first and then they get curious about how yarn is made and then they kind of come into it from that direction? So, you know, it's always a curious way of what that person is like, because I definitely feel like if you go to, like we were talking about earlier, a guild meeting, that there are personality types of the type of people that do specific fiber art crafts, right? Like I feel like weavers are very like methodical, like very math oriented, you know, they're like patterns and precision, you know. So I think of them just like as like a German grandmother, you know, just like, okay, we got things to do and we got to do it precisely, right? But then spinners are definitely more like this, you know, I don't know, just like a very like laid back, you know, like with the potlucks, we're really into like food and cooking and just that very like family kind of communal type of behavior. So then when you have the two personalities come together, it's just a really interesting, you know, almost like a family reunion. You have all these different personality types. And so when you're the one person that just loves everything, it's so hard to like just limit yourself and put the blinders on and say, okay, I'm just a spinner, you know. But it's funny that a knitter can be like, I'm just a knitter. I don't like weaving, you know, or a weaver could be like, I don't like knitting. But when you're a spinner, it's like, no, I love all the things because, you know, I can make yarn. So let me go this way and that way. So yeah. Okay, so when I was talking to you a little bit before the interview, though, you were telling me with your animals that you had something that you referred to as the assisted living pen. So I don't know if you want to share a little bit more about that with us, because I thought that was kind of interesting title to call the area of your farm.
Yeah. Well, every farmer or shepherd approaches their livestock with a different mindset. There's everything from it's nearly a National Geographic special where everybody fends for themselves and the strong survive and the weak don't, all the way to, you know, a lot of coddling and hand holding, whether it's because your animals are dear pets or because they're very expensive breeding stock. So, you know, there's a whole gamut in there. I'd probably lean more toward the everybody is a quasi pet. During the process of building up the flock and getting the wool quality that I wanted, of course, when you're breeding every year, you have a lamb crop and you want to keep the top percentage, excuse me, and then there'll be some percentage that would be good for someone else's flock, an improvement for them. And then there's going to be some animals that for whatever reason are really not suitable to be breeding stock. And if you kept as pets every single animal that was not going to be breeding stock, you would overpopulate yourself in about 3 years. So there was a time when a certain percentage of animals, either because of age and infirmity or because of unneeded characters, went out of the flock into other channels, usually either auction or a meat market. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't like it. I never did like it. It was just sort of a means to an end at the time. And now we've reached a point where the flock stands at about 120 animals. The youngest are 4. My oldest animal, Pickles, she just passed away in January at almost 18.
Wow.
So even if a small percentage of my 4-year-olds make it to be almost 18, that is a lot of years left for Andy and I to be taking care of livestock. So a few years ago, we made the decision that we're not going to breed anybody anymore. They're just going to be an adult flock. We'll take care of everybody as they age out. When they get to a point where they can't take care of themselves, even with help, then we have the vet out to put them to sleep, and they're buried out on the farm. They've been good to us. We're going to be good back. And so in that process, you know, our bell curve of ages are skewing toward the upper reaches. And you get animals that are arthritic, they've lost some teeth, maybe they've got cataracts. They're, you know, despite everything, they're getting older and more frail, and they can't be in the hoi polloi of the rest of the flock. So they go in a special pen where they're kind of in there just with their peers that can't handle life as easily as the younger animals. And they get a little extra special feed. Pardon me. We make sure they don't get knocked around by the younger animals. You know, people think sheep are so gentle and kind. No, if there's food involved, they will step on their own lambs. They will knock down other animals and walk on them. They don't care. So we set them aside, the older ones, so that, and we call them the assisted living pen. And I've got a couple that had meningeal worm, which is it's an internal parasite. It's a roundworm that normally affects white-tailed deer. And if it gets in the wrong host, like a sheep, it doesn't follow the same normal life cycle and stay in the gut. It tends to travel through the body. And unfortunately, one of the places that it wants to go for some unknown reason is the spinal cord. And camelids are also affected very badly. They're hard to pull back from damage once they've been affected. But sheep and goats, if you catch them early enough and realize what's going on, you can apply treatment orally with anthelmintics to stop the process and sometimes reverse it to some degree. But I have some animals that were afflicted with that younger, and although they could function when they were younger, now that they're middle-aged, they almost have like post-polio syndrome where the weakness is returning to their limbs. So I've got a couple of younger animals in that group, but they're also compromised.
Well,
so,
that's really, you know, very special of you to, you know, like save these animals instead of just, you know, sending them off, like you said, to be meat or something like that, to take care of them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very careful not to go overboard and keep an animal going just for the sake of doing it. When their quality has deteriorated, then I have no problem with euthanasia. But I mean, they live and die at our whim, and so it's up to me to make sure their quality of life is good while they are here. That's just part of the bargain.
Yeah, that must be so hard. And, you know, not having ever lived on a farm or like had to actually like raise my own food, I'm pretty sure that I would become a vegetarian if I was that closely connected to the animals that like I had to eat, you know. So that would be really hard. I mean, just even for me, like buying a fish that's like still has its head on, it's like I'm kind of closing my eyes and doing it, you know. But you know, and I can totally understand like why people would want to become like vegetarian or vegan after working with their animals, you know. But you're right, there is this life cycle, and you know, they do provide for us, whether it's their fleece or their meat, you know. And so it's you know, just still a noble thing, I think, that you're, you know, taking care of those that, you know, like you said, that they're still in relatively good health, they're not in pain, but maybe they're not the best. So I think that was just a funny title that you gave it for the assisted living pen.
Yeah.
Okay,
and,
so
I talked to somebody else and she had a similar situation and she calls her group the scratch and dent flock. I thought that was adorable. I love that. So
yeah. It's like the, the refurbished pen, yeah, it's like not quite brand new.
Right.
So in the spirit of all the Fiberside Chats being, on a holiday, so today's holiday because it's March 14th, so it's 3.14 or Pi Day. My question for you about pie in honor of National Pie Day is, what kind of pies do you prefer? Are you team sweet pies or are you team savory? Do you like the chicken pot pies and all of that, or do you prefer the fruit pies and?
I like food in any kind, but if I think of pie, I think of fruit pie. The fruit pies are usually my favorites.
Okay, so you go fruit, or do you go the pudding route, like for filling? What's your favorite?
Fruit pies would win. I love a cherry, blueberry, and apple. Although if there's a lemon meringue in the offing, I would probably go with that because I like tart things. So the lemon meringue would probably trump it.
And so where's your favorite place locally so I can go check it out in Rochester that you like to get pies from, or are your pies the best?
Actually, I do make really good pie, if I have to say so myself. Although if one is out and about, I'm going to give a shout out to Monica's Pies down in Naples.
Oh, yes.
He has a lot of flavors and they're very good.
Yeah, well, that was something that's really unique to our region. For those of you that are not familiar, but there's a thing in Naples, or like in the Finger Lakes area, that they have a lot of wineries and vineyards and all of that in this area. And so these grape pies, which I've never heard of a grape pie before, but they make those pies. And I saw that they had this like special on like the Food Network or whatever, and then it was talking about grape pies in Rochester, and I was like, oh wow, like I never had one before. So are you a fan? Or it's kind of like a trash plate. We also have other unique culinary dishes here too, but are you a fan of the grape pies or no?
Yeah, actually I am. It's a regional thing. Just like sweet potato pie down south is probably a regional thing, but like I say, any kind of pie, I'm in.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you. I think my favorite is when they do apple, but like when they throw like all other, things into it, like with raisins and pecans and cranberries and like all the goodness in there. So yeah, I definitely want to go check out what different places have as their special for pies today, for sure, to bring one home. Okay, so I'm just gonna go into the Facebook group and see if there are any questions. Okay. So okay, this is interesting because like I'm in here and it said, did something happen because it's not working? And then someone said it's working again. So I don't see any other questions that are there. I hope that we were able to be live in the group and that people were able to see this. If not, I did record it, so we should be good there. Yeah, but if anyone has any questions or comments for either like myself or for Robin, feel free to tag us in the comments if you're watching this as the replay, and we will be sure to come and answer your questions. So a question came up. So Lisa asked the question, do you vend anywhere? So where do you sell your wares?
I do vend. The next one I'll be at is the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. And then the very next weekend, I will be at the Shepherd's Market in Rush, New York. Then I will be at the Central New York Fiber Fest in Bouckville in June. And then Sandy Long's Indie Dyers Spectrum is going to be in Allegheny, New York on September 10. And then my last one for the year will be October 1st, and that's the Western New York Fiber Festival. That's over in East Aurora. I have gone farther afield. Maryland's the farthest I go, but Maryland is special. And I have gone farther afield other times, but with gas prices at like $4.75, and I am getting somewhat older. My friend who used to go with me all the time has changed jobs. She's not as able to go away for a weekend. So I'm starting to do closer one-day shows if possible. And of course, our website is always working. And I also do the WAFA, Wool and Fiber Arts Facebook group online shows fairly often as I can.
So with the raw fleece sale coming up, are you one of the vendors for that?
Actually, I'm not, only
Okay.
because I won't be shearing until into April.
Oh, okay.
So I
All
don't
right.
have
We'll
any fresh raw
definitely
fleece.
we'll definitely look forward to seeing you then on the future sales. So let me see.
You betcha.
There's a couple of more comments and
Okay.
questions coming in now that
Okay.
it's working. Okay. So Julie agreed and said that lemon pecan pie is amazing. So there are definitely lemon fans out there, lemon pie fans out there. Okay. And then Julia said, I'm interested in the rug punch spinning. Is the fiber choice and spin technique you do for punching the same as for rug hooking? So is rug punching and rug hooking the same? I didn't know that there was a difference.
There is a difference.
Okay.
Rug hooking is using something that looks like a crochet hook to draw loops up towards yourself through a foundation cloth. You can use either strips of wool fabric, which is the traditional kind, or you can use yarn. When you are rug punching, you're using a hand tool that has a hollow shaft, almost like a
Oh,
hypodermic
okay.
needle, and you thread your wool yarn, or you can use the wool strips if they'll fit through the eye of the needle. And you're actually punching down away from yourself, and your foundation fabric is stretched very tightly. So the weave of the fabric grabs your loop when you draw your punch back out, and you save a loop on the back side, which is actually the front side. So you're working from the back. But to answer her question, I have my yarn mill spun. And I think it is spun a little more tightly for rug work than it would be for knitting, especially the Cotswolds or any other long wool breed that tends to be a higher micron count. You want it to be spun softly, because otherwise it's going to feel like piano wire. Whereas with a rug, where you know it's probably going to get some harsh treatments, you can spin it a little tighter or ply it a little tighter, or both, so it'll stand up real well to wear.
So with the difference in the punch, because I know I've done Russian punch embroidery, so it sounds like it's kind of the same, just like a larger hollow tip needle. But
Okay.
For the punch versus the hooking, do you use both for like rugs and functional like pieces, or would you say that the punch one is more like decorative and then the hooking is more like functional for like an actual like floor mat?
Oh no, I think they're perfectly interchangeable and usable in both ways. You can punch and have a rug, or you can punch and have something decorative for the wall. You can also punch and have a very short pile because you want to apply the piece to a tote bag or the back of a jacket or something like that. So yeah, their uses are interchangeable. The technique is a little different and yet similar. And it does tend to trip up people that are interested in one or the other, because some of the terminology is the same, but it actually means different things. So
Oh, you mean kind of like in spinning and knitting when there's like a worsted yarn versus worsted spinning or worsted prep?
Exactly.
We can't make it easy for the newbies, right? It has to be all complicated. And yeah.
No. Yeah. So yeah, and that's one of the nice things about being in person at a show, or even just talking to people online. You can give some individual attention to a person and help them figure out what they want so that they'll succeed at what they want to do. Some of the really big clearinghouses for fiber and things, I'm sure they're wonderful bang up businesses, and not to detract from them, but we're a small business and very personable, and we can do custom orders. If you want a rug hooking frame that's a certain size, we can talk to you until you're sick of hearing about it, as far as what our fiber will do and won't do, things like that. So I think anybody in the fiber world who has a business, they want to connect to the person who's going to be using what they've spent so much time and effort making, and they want the person to have a good experience doing it. So, never be afraid to ask for samples, never be afraid to ask questions, never be afraid to ask for advice.
Yeah, no, the point you're making is a really good one, because, whether you're a shepherd or a dyer, or even like if you're a spinner that sells your hand spun, what you're creating for the most part, unless you're actually selling like a finished product, is for another artisan to use it, and I think that's a very unique thing to the fiber arts. Like in general, like for example, like if you think of a mechanic, right? Like the mechanic doesn't know where the metal and the rubber was harvested, right? You don't have that connection to where your materials come from in that sense, or you don't really speak to the factory where the parts have been manufactured and talk to the foreman on the line and can ask those questions. So I think that's something that's a really special thing. Like even when people are spinning a fleece, or they're shopping for fleece, and they'll say, oh, okay, like I'm spinning Roger, and they have like a name for the sheep and the yarn and all of that. It makes it such a more enjoyable, connected process, because you're really seeing it kind of, from not from farm to table, maybe like from farm to, body, or whatever it is you're making with your fiber arts. So
yeah,
to hear. Okay. All right, so I think we answered all the questions, but again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just, tag Robin or myself in the comments, and we'll be happy to respond to them. So I do appreciate you for coming on today with me for the interview. So thank you very much.
Oh, and you're more than welcome.
Yeah, and so for those of you that are interested in watching this, if you came in late, don't worry, there's going to be a post. We're going to also put it up on the Wool and Fiber Arts YouTube channel. So there's all of the past Fiberside chats are there as well. If you would like to see any of the past ones, you can just search the group for the hashtag Fiberside Chats, and all of them will come up. And next time on March 21st, so next Monday at 1 p.m., I will be interviewing Tanya of Flannel Cakes Fiber. So I hope that you can come and join our next one. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.